Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Easy English Room. It's honestly so lovely to have you here with us again. I'm Emma, and I'm joining you from our cozy little studio in London. There's something quite special about these moments. Just sitting down, having a proper chat, and connecting with all of you, even if it's through a screen or your headphones. In a way, it feels like we're all in the same room together, just talking about life. And as always, our goal is pretty simple. We want to help you improve your English in a way that actually feels real and useful. So we're not just focusing on grammar or vocabulary in isolation. We're diving into real life situations, the kind you actually experience every day. So whether you're listening while commuting, relaxing at home, or maybe even going for a walk around your neighborhood, just settle in and treat this like a friendly conversation.
And I'm Henry, your co-host, also here in London, by the way. And I've probably had far too many cups of tea already today, but well, that's just part of the lifestyle, isn't it? Seriously though, we're really glad you've decided to spend some time with us. It genuinely means a lot. Now, usually we like to keep things light and fun, and don't worry, there will still be some of that. But today we're getting into something a bit more serious. We're talking about disrespect. And it's one of those things that can really stick with you. It's not just a quick moment that passes. It kind of lingers. You keep thinking about it afterward, sometimes longer than you like.
Yeah, that's so true. And if I'm being honest, it's not always about the exact words someone used. It's more about how it made you feel in that moment. There's something about feeling undervalued or ignored that really stays with you. You might walk away from the situation, but mentally you're still there, replaying it. You start thinking, should I have said something? Or why didn't I react differently? And that loop can be quite exhausting.
That's a really good point. It's almost like your brain creates this mix of emotions, frustration, confusion, maybe a bit of anger, and you don't quite know what to do with it. I mean, I think we've all had that moment where we just freeze and think, wait, what just happened? And then later, hours later sometimes, you suddenly come up with the perfect response. But by then, of course, it's too late. So yeah, if any of that sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone, and you're in the right place today.
Exactly. So in today's episode, we're really going to break things down step by step. We'll look at what disrespect actually looks like, because sometimes it's not obvious. We'll talk about how it affects you emotionally, and most importantly, how you can respond in a way that protects your confidence and self-respect. And by the way, we've also prepared a free PDF guide for you. It's full of useful English phrases, practical tips, and examples you can use in real-life situations.
Yeah, and honestly, that guide can be a lifesaver, especially in those moments when your mind just goes completely blank. When someone says something rude and you just stand there thinking, what do I even say? So yeah, you can find the link in the description. It's definitely worth downloading and keeping on your phone. All right then, I think it's time to get into it. Ready, Emma?
Oh, absolutely. Let's get started.
All right, so let's begin with a situation that's actually quite common. Emma, have you ever been in a meeting or even just a group conversation where someone keeps interrupting you? Like you're trying to explain something and they just talk over you?
Oh, yes, definitely. And honestly, it's one of the most frustrating things. At first, you might brush it off, thinking it's just a one-time thing. But when it keeps happening, it starts to feel quite personal. You begin to wonder if what you're saying even matters. And over time, that can really affect your confidence.
Yeah, I get that. It's almost like you're physically there, but your voice is just not being heard.
Exactly. And actually, this reminds me of something from my university days here in London. I was part of a study group, and everyone was quite passionate, which was great. But there was one person who constantly talked over others. Every time I tried to share my ideas, he would jump in and take over the conversation. At first, I tried to speak up again, but after a while, I just gave up. I stopped contributing altogether. And to be honest, it felt really discouraging. Looking back, I wish I had handled it differently.
That's such a relatable experience, and it really shows how tricky these situations can be. On one hand, you don't want to create tension, but on the other hand, staying silent doesn't feel right either. So you're stuck in this uncomfortable middle ground trying to figure out what to do.
Exactly, and what makes it even more complicated is that disrespect isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, like someone checking their phone while you're talking, or just ignoring your input completely. Those small actions might not seem like a big deal individually, but over time, they really add up.
That's true. It doesn't always have to be loud or dramatic to have an impact. In fact, those quiet, subtle moments can sometimes be even more frustrating because they're harder to call out.
Right. So, in a way, we have to accept that we can't control how other people behave. But what we can control is how we respond, and that's where our power is.
Exactly. So let's talk about different situations. What about strangers? Those quick interactions that still somehow affect your mood. Have you had any recent experiences like that?
Oh, yes, actually. Just last week, I was waiting in line for coffee here in London. Everything was normal, everyone was waiting patiently, and then suddenly someone just stepped right in front of me. For a moment, I was completely caught off guard. I didn't even know how to react.
That's so frustrating.
It really is. And I could feel that instant reaction building up, that rush of irritation. But instead of reacting immediately, I paused. I took a breath and then I calmly said, "Excuse me, I believe I was next." And interestingly, they apologized and moved back.
That's a great example. Staying calm really changes the outcome because the moment you react emotionally, things can escalate very quickly.
Exactly. And sometimes, if you really think about it, people might not even realize what they're doing or how their behavior is affecting others. They're not necessarily trying to be rude or dismissive. It just happens unconsciously. That's why approaching the situation calmly is so important, because it gives them a chance to reflect and correct themselves without feeling attacked or embarrassed.
That's very true. And I think another important point here is that staying calm doesn't just help the other person, it really helps you as well. It allows you to stay in control of your own emotions instead of reacting impulsively. And honestly, managing your emotions in those moments is just as important as addressing the situation itself.
Right, exactly. And for our listeners, it really helps to have a few simple phrases prepared in advance so you're not caught off guard. For example, you could say something like, "Excuse me, could you wait your turn?" Or, "Sorry, I hadn't finished speaking yet." These phrases are polite but firm, and having them ready in your mind can prevent that moment where you just freeze and don't know what to say.
Now, on the other hand, things can get a bit more complicated when the person interrupting or dismissing you is someone you actually know well, like a friend, a family member, or even a close colleague. In those situations, emotions can be more involved, and it's not always as straightforward to respond.
Definitely. It feels much more personal when it's someone close to you because there's already a relationship there. You're not just reacting to a single moment, you're also thinking about the history you share with that person, which can make it harder to speak up.
Yeah, exactly. I actually went through something like that with a friend of mine. They used to dismiss my ideas all the time, almost as if what I was saying didn't really matter. At first, I tried to ignore it because I didn't want to create tension. But over time, it started to build up and really affect how I saw myself and my confidence.
That sounds really draining, honestly. When something like that keeps happening, it can slowly wear you down without you even noticing it first. It's not just about the moment, it's about the long-term impact on how you feel.
It really was, and eventually I realized I couldn't just keep ignoring it. So I decided to say something, but I made sure to do it in a calm and respectful way. I told them how their behavior made me feel without accusing them or attacking them. And surprisingly, they genuinely didn't realize what they had been doing.
That's such a great example of being assertive in a healthy way. You didn't blame them or make them feel defensive. You just expressed your feelings clearly. And that approach makes a huge difference because it opens the door for understanding instead of conflict.
Exactly, and in the end, it actually improved our communication, which I didn't expect at the time.
All right, let's move on to another situation that a lot of people can relate to, the workplace. This is where things can get even more sensitive because professionalism and reputation are involved.
Yes, definitely. The workplace can be a tricky environment because you have to balance being assertive with maintaining professionalism. You can't always respond the same way you would with friends or family.
Exactly. I actually had an experience where a colleague presented my work as if it were their own during a meeting. I was honestly shocked in the moment, and I didn't immediately know how to react without making things awkward.
That's really frustrating. Situations like that can feel unfair, especially when you put in the effort and someone else takes the credit.
It really is. But instead of reacting emotionally right there in the meeting, I decided to pause and give myself some time. Later on, I spoke to them privately and addressed the situation calmly. I explained how it made me feel and clarified the work. Thankfully, they understood and apologized, which made things much better.
That's honestly the best way to handle it, staying professional, calm, and direct. You protected your work and your boundaries without creating unnecessary conflict in front of others.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right moment and the right tone.
All right, let's quickly recap the main points we talked about so our listeners can remember them easily.
First, stay calm. Taking a moment to manage your emotions can completely change how the situation unfolds.
Second, choose your battles. Not every situation needs a reaction, so it's important to decide what really matters.
Third, be assertive. Express your thoughts and feelings clearly, but do it in a respectful and constructive way.
And finally, lead by example. The way you communicate can influence how others treat you over time.
And now, to help you even more with the language and practical expressions you can use, let's bring in Laura for some useful phrases and examples. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much, Henry and Emma. It is a real pleasure to be here at Easy English Room. You've had such an insightful and engaging conversation, and you've used some fantastic vocabulary that I think our listeners can truly benefit from. So let's slow things down a little and take a closer look at these expressions. I'll break each one into a clear explanation followed by an example so you can confidently start using them in your daily English. Dismissive. When someone is dismissive, they treat your ideas, opinions, or feelings as if they are not important or not worth paying attention to. It often feels like they are brushing you off or not taking you seriously. Example: I asked the shop assistant for help, but she gave me a dismissive look and walked away. Assertive. Being assertive means expressing your thoughts, needs, or feelings clearly and confidently while still being respectful to others. It's a perfect balance, not too passive, not too aggressive. Example: he was assertive when he told his colleague, "I'd like to finish my point before you respond." To escalate. To escalate means to make a situation more intense, more serious, or more emotional, often in a negative way. Conflicts can escalate quickly if emotions take over. Example: the argument escalated when both of them started shouting at each other. Subtle. Something subtle is not obvious or easy to notice. It's often small, indirect, or delicate, and you need to pay attention to recognize it. Example: there was a subtle change in her tone, which made me think she was upset. Empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share another person's feelings. It means putting yourself in someone else's position and seeing things from their perspective. Example: he showed great empathy by listening carefully and understanding why she was upset. Boundaries. Boundaries are the personal limits you set to protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. They define what behavior you accept and what you don't. Example: she set clear boundaries by telling her friend she didn't like being interrupted. Professional. Being professional means acting in a respectful, responsible, and mature way, especially in a work environment, even when situations are challenging. Example: despite the disagreement, he remained professional and continued the meeting calmly. To handle. To handle a situation means to deal with it or manage it, especially when it is difficult or uncomfortable. Example: she handled the rude comment with confidence and didn't let it affect her. Golden, as in silence is golden. When something is described as golden, it means it is very valuable or the best possible choice in that situation. Example: sometimes staying quiet instead of arguing is a golden decision. Game changer. A game changer is something that completely transforms a situation or changes the way things work, usually in a very positive way. Example: learning to be assertive was a real game changer for her confidence. I really hope these explanations, along with the examples, help you not only understand these words, but also feel comfortable using them in real conversations. Try to practice them little by little, and soon they'll become a natural part of your English.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was incredibly helpful and so clearly explained. I really love how you described the Goldilocks nature of being assertive. It's such a simple idea, but it makes the concept so much easier to understand and remember. It's not too soft, not too harsh, just right. I think that explanation is going to sit in our listeners' minds for a long time, especially when they find themselves in tricky situations and need to respond in the moment.
Cheers, Laura. As always, you've done a brilliant job. You really have a way of breaking down these tricky words and expressions so they feel natural and approachable instead of intimidating. I'm sure our listeners are already thinking about how they can use these phrases in their next conversation, whether it's at work, with friends, or even with a stranger. That's what it's all about, turning knowledge into real-life communication.
Well, that brings us to the end of our episode today. It's been such an important and meaningful discussion. Just remember, disrespect is something we all encounter at different points in life. It's unavoidable, but it never has to define who you are or how you see yourself. Every single interaction, even the uncomfortable ones, can be an opportunity to learn something new about yourself and grow a little bit wiser, stronger, and more confident.
Spot on, Emma. That's such a powerful takeaway. Whether it's a stranger on the street, a friend, a family member, or someone you work with, you always have the power to choose your response, and that choice makes all the difference. We genuinely love to hear from you. How do you handle it when someone is rude or dismissive? Do you have any personal strategies or tips for staying calm in those moments? Maybe something that has worked really well for you. Let us know in the comments, because your experience might really help someone else in our community.
And don't forget to grab that PDF guide we mentioned earlier. It's full of practical phrases and helpful tips that you can start using right away, and it's waiting for you in the link below. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with us today. We truly appreciate it. And remember, no matter what anyone says or does, you are stronger than any rude comment, and your voice matters.
Keep your head high, stay kind, and keep practicing your English every single day. Even in small ways, it all adds up. We're always here to support you on your journey. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time here at Easy English Room. Bye for now.